Hey, Dr. Scott Bolland here, and welcome to Leading in 10, the live stream where we hope to help you amplify your impact in leading yourself and others in only 10 minutes. Today, I'm talking with David Gunsberg about leading change both in yourself and in others, and why is it so bloody difficult. David is a seasoned executive and strategy professional who's worked across tech, telco, higher ed, and for-purpose sectors. He currently works on strategy development in the area of social impact investing. Hello, David.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
It was so smooth with that teleprompter. It was working so well.
I can feel the love. That's all that matters.
Well, welcome. Welcome to live podcasting. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well, Scott.
So what are we talking about today?
We're talking about one of my favorite tools in the toolbox of dealing with change, both in organizations and in yourself, and that's the Beckett Harris Change Equation, which sounds cool and looks cool when you kind of draw it. It's deceptively simple, but really useful.
And I agree with you. The first time you shared this with me, I thought, oh my God, this person I work with is never going to change because of these factors, and things are never going to improve. I went into this total downward spiral. So thank you very much for that.
It's called the gift of insight, and I'm happy to have helped.
All good. All good.
So, like, I've done a lot of work with executives and executive teams, management teams, and looked at organizations who've got stalled change programs. And I think about some of the changes I try and put in place in my life. And I'm also a simple man, so I like simple models that I can kind of bring to mind, apply to the situation, and feel like I'm doing better as a result of having used a structure inside like a minute or two. There's like 6 and 8 factor models of change. I've seen a like 8x8 grid, which is 64. I'm too simple, not clever enough to grasp that. This is slightly higher order, and its hypothesis is, as I said, deceptively simple. It says in order to get change, the product of the dissatisfaction with the current situation, the clarity of a compelling and desirable and achievable vision of the future, and the clarity of the first steps I need to take to make it happen, they have to be greater than whatever latent resistance there is in the system, either if the system is just me or a team or an entire group of people. The rub, the trick, the insight is the fact that it's a product. D times V times F has to be greater than R, which means if any characteristic on the left collapses to 0, the whole equation on the left collapses and resistance wins. In the executive context, I can think of working with just an extraordinarily charismatic leader who had a stalled change program and said to me, like, David, we've gone from annual like executive get-togethers and vision meetings to twice a year, and I'm about to go to quarterly. And if you've got this model in your head, you kind of go, right, so is anyone unhappy with the future, and do they know what to do? And the answer to both of those questions was no. And it's like, you show this model and people kind of get it. They go, oh, right, I understand. It doesn't hold a value about which one's the most important. I think that insight about that kind of product relationship on the left-hand side, you need all of them. And maybe you can compensate and think about, what am I best at doing? And it may be even in the reducing resistance on the right-hand side. But I like it a lot, and I found it useful, and so lots of people I've worked with.
And I think each factor by itself actually makes a lot of sense. So the dissatisfaction, particularly if you're coaching, the first thing is coaching has to be intentional. People have to want to change, have to be unhappy with where they are. If you say, oh, I'm comfortable, well, that's not going to really motivate you. And so having that negative affect is actually quite useful. Is to be frustrated, is to be upset, is to be wanting change, is actually a good place to start. So actually listening to those negative emotions is actually quite good in some sense. But if you don't have that vision of what could be different, what could we aim for, it's not going to work. and also the first step of how to get there is really important. The other
Mm,
thing I find interesting is the resistance, because I think in coaching, for instance, you ask people, okay, they might have these SMART goals, but the question is, well, what are you scared of happening if you took that particular action?
mm.
Usually there's a hidden commitment. That's this resistance to change.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a like a coarse version of an immunity to change at the human level,
yeah.
and at the system level, it can, like, if you think about a work system or a coaching system, and you might have had all the teams decide they want to work together, and this is the bit that executives can forget, is when they work out that, like, the two key platforms that we work on don't talk to each other. Like, you're
Mm,
looking for, we've made the commitment, we're all dissatisfied, but there's also a power in working out and seeing value in undoing that piece of resistance. If I've got all the other stuff in place, finding that resistance is an equally powerful and valuable insight to unlock.
mm. Have you got any particular examples in mind of this that sort of resonate with you?
Uh, so when I'm teaching this to people and don't have a lot of time, so the master classes in this is for science. Google 1990s infomercials and watch how in 6 minutes they will create dissatisfaction out of nowhere. Have you ever thought about the quality of the air in your home? Let me give you a compelling vision of the future. Clean air in your home. Look at these fake lungs we've got. Look how clean they, blah, blah, blah. The first steps, pick up that phone, and you better do it straight away because there's limited stock. And then they go through all the, why you might not do it. You think it might be noisy, anything you want. We don't even have to pay right now. No money down. Send it back in 90 days. And you've gone from not even caring about this thing to you find yourself picking up the phone and ordering an air cleanup. I didn't, but um,
Mhm.
I had a wonderful woman I was working with say this is the underlying business model of most of the beauty industry: create a flaw and then sell to it. My favorite example of an absence of dissatisfaction was working in a sales organization where my executive sponsor that I was working with was like, we're killing our margin here by selling the wrong things. And went to the sales floor, and it was almost that canonical pictures of holiday destinations, cars, motorcycles, boats, jet skis, and the sales execs were all coining it because they made buckets of money selling the wrong thing. So there was no dissatisfaction. They were loving the system, and the system was supporting exactly what they didn't want. So you can work out
Mm,
how to create some dissatisfaction.
mhm,
And in my personal life, if I think about the very, very challenging journey back to fitness post COVID, is the resistance in the system that comes from working at home, having no commute time, the desire to be present all the time for work and add value in that, and going, no,
mhm,
I am dissatisfied. My vision of the future is clear, and my first steps, make them as simple as possible and remove the items of resistance, all the way down to making some changes about footwear so I can find half an hour, eat something healthy, and walk around the block.
mhm.
Um, it's simple is hard, right?
And I think I like the phrase that you've said to me 1,000 times, the obstacle is the way.
Yeah,
Is identifying, it's kind of the whip technique, is the what's the wish, what's the outcome, but what's the obstacle? And that's
yeah.
kind of the resistance. And that is the way forward. Is, you might have these vision boards of all these things that you want to be, you might know that next step. But if you're not actually taking time out to say, well, what is the obstacle that's actually preventing me from doing this? What am I scared of? What's in the way? What are these barriers? And putting your focus around, well, how do we, understand these barriers even more and circumvent them, is kind of one of the most powerful questions you can ask. It's quite
A- a-
really interesting.
And the model gives you permission to recognize that some of those things on the left might be the obstacle.
Mm,
That I've been in organizations that have been more technical in the way that they run, and the compelling future vision that was offered. I remember going up on a poster was 10% K plus 10% CAGR year on year, 3 years, but it was all the abbreviations,
mhm,
and it was a heart. organization. And the leader was going, but I've put the vision on the wall. So there was a vision, but it wasn't compelling and it wasn't appealing. And there was limited resistance in the system. But the
Yeah.
absence of a vision meant even though that resistance was small, it still won.
Yeah.
Because and that leader's journey was on learning to take 10% compound annual growth and turn it into, what does that look like for people that we're trying to help in regional Australia?
Mm.
What does it look like for transforming trade in the non-metropolitan parts of this amazing country? And when that vision became more real, the rest unclicked. So the obstacle is the
Hmm.
way. And for that person, it was a journey of going, I'm not great at selling a vision. I feel fake and false. But he was just as passionate about the vision as anyone else. But his journey was to unlock his capacity to create enough vision. What was great is the latent resistance was so low, it didn't take much.
Mm.
Even him ineffectively standing in front of people and trying to be charismatic was remarkably compelling and authentic, because you could see that here was a leader modeling vulnerability, explaining to a leadership team why this actually mattered, and then the change just began to flow.
So just to summarize, for a leader or for somebody who's trying to drive change in themselves, what are some practical tips? If we could sort of summarize our discussion.
So my practical tips would be, if you're thinking about what you're trying to do, give yourself a budget of one sentence for each of those boxes. See if you can build a narrative either for yourself or for the organization or the person you're trying to help that says, what is the one sentence of version of what's in there. We can't stay where we are because this opportunity is available to us. If when we go back from today, you guys do this team does that, and that team does that, we can get there. I know you're worried about A, B, and C, but we've got those in hand. I know that was well over a sentence, but kind of like, can you truncate the story
Yep.
onto those stepping stones that might help someone make the leap to decide to come with you? And sometimes that someone is you.
Yep. Perfect. And just as a final thought, how can people get in touch with you if they want to pick your brains or hire you?
Well, social media is a hellscape, so I'm kind of not there very much.
Yeah.
People can find me on LinkedIn if they want to. That's probably the simplest place to find me. Ping me with a DM, mention that you saw me on this, and that you're not trying to help me grow my business with more leads. And I'll
Oh, right.
almost certainly reach out for a virtual coffee. I love talking about this stuff and helping people make the world a better place.
Perfect. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Scott.
Cheers.